The Virgin Suicides is a book set in Michigan during the 1970s. The author, Jeffrey Eugenides, portrays a shocking story of a family in crisis. The narrator of the story seems to be a group of neighborhood boys, and we later find out that the story is their recollection of the events at the reunion. The boys tell the story of how they carefully observed the Lisbon girls and their family for months, and they still never fully understood the events of the story. The Lisbons seemed like an average middle-class family until one day, 13-year-old Cecilia Lisbon slit her wrists in the family's bathtub, but is saved by the paramedics. From then on, the family did not seem so normal anymore. After Cecilia is discharged from the hospital, the family's therapist suggests that they give the girls more freedom, so they throw a party in which Cecilia throws herself into a fence post and finally succeeds in killing herself. The story continues with the boy observing the behavior of the remaining family members, and they begin to notice how restricted and miserable the girls are. The boys are especially interested in 14-year-old Lux Lisbon, who lives much more promiscuous life than her sisters. The group of boys asked to take the Lisbon girls to the homecoming dance, and after much convincing, are permitted. Trip, one of the boys, and Lisbon sneak under the bleachers at prom to drink and make out, while the rest of the sisters dance with their dates. When the girls need to leave, Lux and Trip are nowhere to be found, and so they leave without him. Trip had taken Lux to the football field where they had sex, but Lux began to cry, and so Trip left her. After this, Lux is known for her sexual activities, and the girls are not even allowed to go to school. The girls begin to act even more strange and leave messages for the boys to find. Eventually, the girls call the boys and convince them to save them. When the girls are scheduled to meet the guys, Lux greets them to stall for her sisters, who are separately committing suicide. Lux goes to the garage, starts the car, and dies. Mary is the only sister to survive, but soon overdoses on sleeping pills and dies. The neighborhood and the boys are left in shock, and the parents leave as there is nothing left for them in the house.
People saw their clairvoyance in the wiped-out elms, the harsh sunlight, and the continuing decline of our auto industry. Even then, as teenagers, we tried to put the pieces together. We still can't. Now, whenever we run into each other at business lunches or cocktail parties, we find ourselves in the corner going over the evidence one more time. All to understand those 5 girls.
Eugenides told a story once during an interview about how while he was visiting his nephew, he met his 15-year-old babysitter. Within 20 minutes of meeting her, she told him that she and all of her sisters had tried committing suicide. Eugenides was shocked both by the story and that she'd been so comfortable telling him. She told him that she and her sisters were just under a lot of pressure. About 1 year later, he used that story as inspiration and began writing The Virgin Suicides. After publishing The Virgin Suicides, Jeffrey Eugenides made a claim that he felt that growing up in Detroit at the time of its decline influenced the book. The way the buildings around him began to fall apart created a sense of impermanence that the Lisbon family seemed to represent in The Virgin Suicides. Eugenides stated that at the time he didn't realize it, but looking back, his childhood spent in Detroit influenced the fate of the Lisbon family. While writing The Virgin Suicides, Jeffrey Eugenides lost his main steady job. Although this seems like a minor influence on the book, it did affect how Eugenides wrote it. Eugenides was saddened by the loss of his job and income, and it is believed that some of this sadness is reflected by the book. The loss of his job also encouraged Eugenides to finish the book, and he felt that maybe the book would have never been published if it weren't for the need of a new income. The decline of the auto industry influenced The Virgin Suicides, since it was set in the 1970s when the industry was failing. One of the very first lines of the book states that the people all remember the girls' deaths as being around the same times as the fall of the auto industry. The auto industry, especially in Detroit, since the industry was Detroit's main source of income, was important to Eugenides as he grew up there. Since he experienced this event firsthand, it likely influenced the setting of the book. Twin sisters were found dead in their car due to gunshot wounds in early 2018. The authorities believed it was a suicide pact between the sisters. The sisters had been battling OCD for the majority of their lives. The girls would take showers longer than 10 hours, would starve themselves to avoid using public restrooms when they went out, and would go through several bottoms of rubbing alcohol every day. The girls described their compulsions as someone in their head holding them at gunpoint, and they had to do what the person said. They told the news before they died that they had been contemplating suicide since the age of 13, the same age as the controlled Cecilia Lisbon. Picnic at Hanging Rock is a miniseries based on a novel written by Joan Lindsay. The series is about how a group of girls from a strict boarding school go missing and are eventually announced dead. One woman is found at the base of a tree, dead from apparent suicide. The Lisbon girls were also kept under strict rule, and although they did not literally run away from like the girls in Picnic at Hanging Rock, they ran away from life by killing themselves. A major social issue today is isolation. Loneliness is an increasing problem in society. Humans are meant to be social animals, and we need to feel connected to one another. Social pain is as real to humans as physical pain, and so loneliness hits us hard. Even though we have technology that is meant to keep us connected, we find ourselves using it instead of actually going out. Loneliness has major impacts on people's lives and health. It can lead to addictions such as smoking or obesity, since people are trying to fill the gap of loneliness. The Lisbon sisters were isolated from the world, especially once they were pulled out of school, and it resulted in their suicides. There is, and always has been, a stigma and a double standard around sexuality and virginity. Some believe being a virgin makes you a prude, while society views non-virgins as sluts. Women seem to receive the worst of the stigma, since the perfect woman is squeaky clean and saves themselves, but guys seem to also get mad when a girl won't put out. In a survey done in the Journal of Sex Research, it was found that out of 560 straight adults, only a quarter were virgins. Those people reported that they felt as if they were abnormal. They also felt excluded sexually and feel that they are turned down more frequently. It was even found that virgins were excluding other virgins. In the virgin suicides, the boys were in awe at Lux's sexual encounters and seemed to find it quite crazy. The family, once they found out about Lux, locked the girls up because of the connotations and stigma surrounding sex.